It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
By Sunday.
.06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Thursday. I had to double check that real quick here. Yes, it's Thursday. I knew it probably was because I can see the weekend from here.
Today's show is sponsored by Junebug Berry Muffins. Are they berries? Are they June bugs? Are they either? Taste it. Find out.
Trying not to put bugs in my diet if I can possibly help it. Just saying.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave. Just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave. I was not going to do this at the beginning of the show. In fact, I was actually not going to do this at all. And then I thought, no, let's get it over with. So old Uncle Joe, or Sleepy Joe as some people, Joe Mumbles, whatever you want to say, Joe Biden once again is telling stories that are just completely not true. Now, he has done this his whole life. There's other people who have. Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton told some whoppers. Joe Biden I've been picking on him since he first became a senator. That was back like in 75 or something like that. A lot of people have been. He just doesn't know what the truth is. He's always telling tall tales. So, the latest one, his uncle was shot down in World War II and eaten by African cannibals. Hang on, I'm just waiting for that to sink in. His uncle was an Army Air Corps pilot, says Joe, single-engine fighter plane, shot down and eaten by African cannibals. Here is Joe telling the story.
We called him Uncle Bozy. He was shot down. He was an Army Air Corps before there was an Air Force. He flew single-engine planes, reconnaissance flights over New Guinea. He had volunteered because someone couldn't make it. He got shot down in an area where there were a lot of cannibals in New Guinea at the time. They never recovered his body, but the government went back when I went down there, and they checked and found parts of the plane and the like. And
Okay, so here's the deal. Right away, of course, people on the right wing start saying, well, the story's not true. And here's a tweet from somebody on the left wing. Large right-wing accounts are now attacking Biden for this video claiming that he rambled about his Uncle Bozy, who he said was shot down in an area with cannibals. Okay, first off, it wasn't Africa, it was New Guinea, to be specifically. And we got to make sure I get this right. So New Guinea, here we go. There's also Papua New Guinea, so I want to make sure I got, so there's Papua New Guinea. Is there a New Guinea? No? Okay. As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, New Guinea is not, and also called Papua New Guinea, is not in Africa. But okay, correct me if I got something wrong on that. All right, so here's what actually happened. Because some people actually do digging on this, right? Here's the write-up from the U.S. military. On May 14th, 1944, a A-20 Hovac, and has a serial number, with a crew of 3 and 1 passenger. His uncle was the passenger. His uncle was not part of the Army Air Corps. His uncle was a passenger. It was not a single-engine fighter plane. It was a twin-engine plane, of which his uncle was a passenger. Departed from an airfield near Los Negros Island for a courier flight to a different airfield in New Guinea. For unknown reasons, so they doesn't say anything about being shot down. It may have been, may have not been, but it just says for unknown reasons. The plane was forced to ditch in the ocean off the north coast of New Guinea. Both engines failed at low altitude, and the aircraft nose hit the water hard. 3 men failed to emerge from the sinking wreck and were lost in the crash. 1 crew member survived and was rescued by a passing barge. Aerial search the next day found no trace of the aircraft or lost crew members. Okay, so it seems unlikely from this particular account that Uncle Bozy was eaten by passing cannibals that would have been able to dive way down that deep and pull bodies out of the plane. Still, cannibals might really be motivated. Who knows? Maybe they're deep diving cannibals. Kind of doubt that. So, was it a lie? Well, Biden has sold some whoppers in his time, but this is more along the lines of his corn pop. I don't, it's one of those things where he just doesn't have the story completely right. Let's just put it that way. He really doesn't have the story right on this. You can go ahead and decide what you want to decide on it. But what I like to do is go back to, here, 1988.
There is one less candidate in the race for the presidency tonight. Delaware Senator Joseph Biden dropped out of the hunt today, saying the disclosures about his plagiarism in law school and his exaggerations about his academic record made it impossible for him to continue.
I do it with incredible reluctance, and it makes me angry. I'm angry with myself for having been put myself in the position of having to make this choice.
The Delaware Democrat is the second candidate to be forced from the race by questions of character and integrity. Gary Hart dropped out.
Okay, now let's go back to a different story, same guy.
The new questions stem from taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
His memory had failed. Is that what we call lying now? His memory has failed. So, okay, this is just the latest thing. And it's old Uncle Joe, if you will. Old Uncle Joe, who just tells tall tales all the time and exaggerates them. And then the people who want to support Joe Biden will rush in to support him without bothering to check. Maybe he is lying. Maybe he's lied his entire life, but they don't want to know that. Morning, Chet and Yoder. Was it a Boeing? I don't think so. Did the door blow off? No, the engines failed.
The thing that I miss the most about living in Denver is the fact that you can have a Target, a dispensary, and a strip club, and a Chick-fil-A all in the same parking lot.
I'm gonna pretend like that didn't happen, and everything will be A-okay.
Well, that image is going to stick with you all day.
3.
If it matters in Wyoming, it matters to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Call Glenn at 888-97-WOODS and make your voice heard. AM 1030, K2 Radio.
6:22 is the time. Wake Up Wyoming. I do have plenty of Wyoming and regional things to talk about today, but I wanted to get into this also. So I have for quite a few years said that national public media, which is public radio, public TV, just needs to be defunded. And I think they get over like $500 million a year from the federal government, the taxpayers, your money. But what do they really deliver? But more and more left-leaning news. So it got so bad. I used to watch them and listen on radio. But they got so bad, I eventually just quit. And just so you know, when I look at my folders here, the only thing I use Google for. Google is very good at organizing information and allowing me to get to it no matter where I am, whether on my phone, tower, laptop, in another state, whatever. I can get to it, right? So when I open up the browser, I don't use Google as a search engine. Instead, I have these folders at the top when the browser opens up. It's news, opinion, Wyoming news, and on it goes, all these folders. And that's where I do my daily work to put the show together for you. For quite some years, public media, radio and television, was in the news file. But then I moved them over to the opinion file. Because it's not news anymore, their opinion. And their hardcore left is one thing when they were left-wing opinion. They were hardcore left-wing opinion. It used to be when they would have a panel discussion on their evening television news, they would bring on a conservative. But more and more the conservatives they brought on were not really conservatives. They were moderately conservative at best. Oftentimes I would listen to this guy and think, how is this the conservative voice? You don't really have a conservative on your panel, yet they said they did. So I gave up on them. And for years I've been advocating they should just be defunded. If they can make it on their own, which I think they can, cool. Great. But taxpayer money should not go into this. Now, there have been at least a couple of states that have quit funding their state public radio and TV with state money. Wyoming, I don't know what our deal is here. But we should just quit funding them with that kind of money, right? So recently, a gentleman who's worked for public radio for 25 years and writes a lot of articles for their website, he finally just got sick of just how far left it went. And he noticed there were 87 editors in Washington, D.C., and they all identified as hardcore leftist Democrat. No conservatives. And he mentioned to them there's no diversity of opinion. None. And they thought that was a great idea. So because he wrote an article and got a lot of media attention, he was suspended, in which he quit, essentially, because he was about to get fired. Now, the woman who is the CEO of public media used to be the CEO of Wikipedia. And get a load of this headline. NPR CEO says she coordinated with government to censor misinformation when she was CEO of Wikipedia. Here's part of what she said.
We took a very active approach to disinformation and misinformation coming into not just the last election, but also looking at how we supported our editing community in an unprecedented moment where we were not only dealing with the global pandemic, we were dealing with a novel virus, which by definition means we knew nothing about it in real time. And we're trying to figure it out as the pandemic went along. And so we really set up in response to both the pandemic, but also in response to the upcoming US election and as a model for future elections outside of the US, including a number that are happening this year, we just obviously went through yet another Israeli election. The model was around how do we create sort of a clearinghouse of information that brings the institution of the Wikimedia Foundation with the editing community in order to be able to identify threats early on through.
And she goes on and on like this. You get the idea. So this is what she did. Flat out says that as CEO of Wikipedia, they're going to make sure to edit out any misinformation, which is what they're doing with public radio and television. Isn't it interesting, and I don't find it surprising, though, that the purveyors of misinformation are the very people who are editing for misinformation. In other words, the foxes are guarding the hen house in this case. So, we listen to what government tells us, and we because of that, and we're editing for misinformation. What about when government is spitting out misinformation and lies? And then here's government-run media, which is public media, And, well, they are purveyors of misinformation. Why not edit them out? So you can see what we're dealing with here now, right? I-80 John is up. Morning, Glenn. Where will the liberals go to whine? Left-wing talk radio has failed every time. Well, I tell you where they go. MSNBC, CNN, public media like public radio and public TV. This is where they go to whine. Oh, I know that talk radio as a format like this has failed. But yeah, just The View. They go to The View to whine. So they definitely have places, and there's a lot of online sources. They used to own Twitter until Elon Musk came along, but they can still go ahead and do it on Facebook. So yeah, they have plenty of places to whine. Oftentimes, John, when I hear those on the left say, well, we need equal time. You want equal time? Absolutely, let's do equal time. That means you have to give conservatives more time. Because conservatives run very little of online chat rooms and social media. Conservatives run very little in case of newsrooms. I mean, they have Fox News. That's about it. Newspapers and other news publications, very few are run by conservatives. So if liberals want equal time, then they're going to have to give us some. Coming up on 6:30, local news update on your weather forecast. Wake up, Wyoming.
Sunday.
Live and local, all across Wyoming. Wake up, Wyoming, with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join in at 888-97-WOODS or the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
It's 6:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. I want to do one more thing on public radio, public television, which is why I think I've been saying for years they should be defunded. The new CEO, of course, at one point was the CEO of Wikipedia, and she just flat out admits she was involved in censorship there. And she said, well, getting rid of misinformation is what she'll say. According to government standards, and one of the biggest purveyors of misinformation is your government. Government-run public radio and television, of course they're going to follow along with that. There was a time, this was in my youth here, I used to watch public television news and listen to National Public Radio, All Things Considered, and Morning Edition. I used to really enjoy them. But and that was at a time when if you looked at who listened and watched, it was about 50-50 split as far as political ideology goes. So more conservative and liberal people both watched, libertarians watched. But then again, they were making sure to be as balanced as they could be. And as the years went by, they just kept going more and more to the left. And if you watch, the ratings went that way too. Not only have the ratings gone way down for news from public media, radio and TV, they've gone way down, but they've also gone way more left as well. But at the same time, I have to take a look at, because I'm going back to I-80 John, what you were saying. Where do the liberals go to whine? Well, yeah, they did try talk radio, but they weren't able to take that over. That just completely failed. But they did take over public television and radio. And not just the news shows, even Sesame Street. I mean, all of these programs went way left. And there was a time when you could watch Fox News and CNN, and even MSNBC was more fair and balanced than it is today. All of those now are just talk television, all of those three networks, which I've shut them all off. They're all just talk television now. When I do manage to catch little bits and pieces, all that's on is one panel-driven talk show after the next where people are screaming at the camera, and very little actual news takes place, which is why I don't call them news sites anymore. In fact, it's very difficult to find a place that actually just gives the news. There are a few sites out there that do that and try to remain as balanced as possible, but most do not. It's very difficult to find anybody who does. This is why I spend most of my morning pouring through just to find news stories that are actually news stories and not left or right-leaning opinions, so I can actually get a look at what's going on. Very difficult to do these days because most of it's ideological driven. Now, I don't mind that if that's first two things. First off, pay for it yourself. I mean, if public radio and television want to go commercial, go for it. I think they'll do just fine. There's enough of an audience to support it. They don't need $500 million a year from the taxpayers. They already make enough money without that. So they'll do fine. And even MSNBC makes a living at it, even though they're hardcore left-leaning talk television, not a news organization anymore. At least they do fine. The ratings for all the different so-called news networks are slowly fading as more and more people shut it off and go elsewhere. And what would be interesting to find is a news channel that is just news. I would love somebody to start that, a news channel that is just absolutely news. But also, besides funding it yourself, commercial, whatever the case may be, the next thing is be who you say who you really are and be that. So in other words, if public radio and TV would just admit we're leftist opinion. That's why I put them in the opinion file for what I do every day. Just say you don't tell everybody you're fair and balanced. You're not. Tell everybody what you are, your opinion. And your left opinion. That's fine if that's who you say you are. I do the same thing here in Wyoming. There's that so-called news site, WyoFile. Yeah, they are left opinion. They've made it into the opinion folder. They're left-leaning opinion. They don't really do news at all. I wish they would just say that they are. Go ahead, just say who you are and then do that. Don't lie to everybody about it. And that's what really more than anything gets me. So pay for it yourself, be a commercial venture, whatever the case is, and then admit freely, openly, this is what we are. Don't lie to other people, and for God's sakes, don't even lie to yourself about it. Because I know public radio and television, no, we're balanced in news and we're telling the truth. No, you're not. It's important more than, I wrote this in my book, The Uncomplicated Life. It's bad enough to be a liar. It's really bad. In fact, I consider it a psychological disorder if you're lying to yourself. Let's wake up my own port.
Serious takes on local politics, or something like that. Tune in weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
6:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off to Laramie we go to talk to David Settles. So, Dave, I'm just sitting here looking at, I actually have, I know you probably have in front of you too, a telephone that's actually a landline, right?
Yes, we do have one in the studio.
Okay. How often do you use it?
Not very often.
Okay. I do get calls to the show, so I use it for that. Other than that.
Right.
Okay. No one ever, way back when we only had landlines, could ever say, I lost my phone or I forgot my phone. That wasn't. If you called someone, you knew exactly where they were.
Very true. Very true.
Okay. Then I started thinking, 411 was information. Right. Mm-hmm. Never understood 911 being emergency because on the old dial-up days, you had to wait for that 9 to come all the way back around. You could be dead by then.
Yeah, especially on the rotary phone.
Yeah, it shouldn't have been like 111.
Exactly.
Would have made more sense. Or just go 11. That would have been fine. 2 of them. All right. Let me see. There were some other numbers there was a a ring back number. Dial your phone number and then enter star something, whatever the heck is, and hang up your phone.
That one, that's star 69?
Something like that, yeah. And your phone would ring back. Okay. You could dial a number to get the time and temperature.
Yes, that was very handy back in the day.
Yeah. You ever just do it out of boredom?
Nope, I don't. Okay. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know if they even offer that anymore.
I don't know.
A lot of places got rid of that.
I did ask a while ago, could you, because if you go to Chugwater, Wyoming, hanging on the wall at the restaurant there, which is the soda fountain, they just installed a phone, and it's an old rotary phone. And I called Jill Winger, who owns the place. Does it really work? And she said, oh, yeah, you can dial in and out. Oh, I didn't know rotary still did that. So can you still dial O for operator? And the answer is, Yes, you can, but you don't get a person. You get an automated system.
Oh, those, okay.
Yeah,
those can be frustrating.
And then if you dial 411 for information, you can get a person, but it depends on where you are in Wyoming as to whether you're going to get a person or not. In most cases, dialing information is an automated service. So you talk to the machine, and the machine will look it up, but there's not a person there anymore. And information used to be fun to talk to.
Yes, very true. Very true.
Okay.
And it wasn't always 411. Wasn't it just dial the operator at 0 or whatever?
I guess it would depend on where you are, because where I grew up, it was 411 for information. And the operator, if you were having some kind of a problem, I guess so.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Glenn. Good morning, everybody. How you doing? Well, the Wyoming Cowgirl basketball team has added a pair of players, as head coach Heather Ezel announced that on Wednesday. Logan Alvar, former standout at Kelly Walsh High School and with the Casper College women's basketball program. The 6'4" will join the Cowgirls in the fall and have 2 years of eligibility remaining. She was an All-Region 9 tournament, All-Region 9 team member, helped the Thunderbirds to back-to-back junior college national tournament appearances, a two-time All-Region tournament team honoree. This past season, she started all 35 games at Casper College and was second on the team at 11.1 points per game, shot over 46% from the floor, also added 5.9 rebounds per contest, and had 2.5 assists and a steal per game. And then Lana Beslik, 5'8" guard from Split, Croatia, in the Western Reserve Academy, spent this last season at that academy in Ohio, and then prior to that was with Kazel Split in the Croatia Premier Liga. And in 19 games with them, averaged 7 points, 5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.7 steals per game. She played for the junior Croatian national team from U14 to U20, helped them win the U18 European Championship Division B in 2023. And in 6 games in those championships, Beslik averaged 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 2.2 steals per game. And so a couple of additions to the Cowgirl basketball program. The Wyoming Cowgirl golfers wrapped up the second day of the Mount West Women's Championships in Rancho Mirage, California. The Cowgirls tied for 8th place at 26 over par. They are led right now by Kyla Wild. She followed her even par round to 72 with a 73, and she is tied for 14th right now, entering the final round, which will be today out in California. Let's go to the high school scene where Cheyenne Central and Cheyenne East, the rivals, squared off in soccer on Wednesday, and the girls' match ended up in a 2-2 draw. And Central had a 1-0 lead at halftime, and then the two teams combined for 3 goals in the last 10 minutes, and really in about a 6-minute span near the end of the match, ended in a 2-2 draw. The boys' match went the way of the second-ranked Central Indians, won at 1-0. On the softball diamond, Cheyenne Central defeated Cheyenne South 21-6, thanks to a 12-run second inning. Izzy Kelly had 4 hits, including 2 triples and 2 RBIs. Katie Hines added 3 hits and 4 RBIs and got the win in the circle. And our WyoPreps athletes of the week this week, Buffalo's Carly Norman and Torrington soccer player Anthony Arnish. You can find out all the details at WyoPreps.com and on the WyoPreps app, including watch the video interviews with those 2 young student athletes. And you can also nominate Fridays from 5 p.m. through Mondays at 9 a.m. for our WyoPreps Athlete of the Week honors at WyoPreps.com. And that's your sports this hour.
And the Rockies lost.
Yes, they did. Okay, I wasn't going to mention it.
No, I'm just tossing. I figured you were going to kind of skip it because why bother? But let's just get that out of the way. They lost. But how much did they lose by?
1 run. Oh. They actually came back and made it a game in the 8th inning, lost 7-6.
Okay, that's doing pretty good for them. All right, thank you, David. Coming up on some local business that we have to take care of in news time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Hey, son.
Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Thursday, and I swear I can see the weekend from here. Next story up, University of Wyoming is trying to figure out what to do with its DEI program now that much of it's been defunded.
Today's show is sponsored by Junebug Berry Muffins. Are they berries? Are they June bugs? Are they either? Taste it. Find out.
I'm not going to because I'm trying to stay away from eating bugs. All right, so For quite a while, I've been saying that I would love to just get rid of the money that goes from Wyoming to the University of Wyoming for a lot of different things, and even including the the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which is something that's just not necessary. First off, it's a very expensive office, and they have supposedly all sorts of programs they're running and so on, and we don't need it. It's not necessary to an education. It simply is not. Universities, colleges around the country, and companies as well, actually did better without DEI. It's making things worse, not better. But people think they have to virtue signal by having it. So, all right, here's what happened. During the last legislative session in Wyoming, I was so happy to hear this. Elected officials removed $1.7 million from the University of Wyoming's budget specifically for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I didn't realize it was costing that much money to run this thing. And not just the office, but other programs and so on. So Governor Mark Gordon vetoed a portion of that. His concern was getting rid of all of it would put some federal funding for the university at risk. And my answer is I don't care about the federal funding. If somebody's waving money in front of me saying, you need to do what we say or we're not going to give you this money, well, keep your money then. I'm not going to be manipulated that way. All right. So UW is now working to see what they can do with this. Here's a message from the university president, Ed Seidel. He said the message from lawmakers, regardless of the welcome line item veto from the governor, is that our DEI efforts must change and discussions are underway to determine the best path forward, he says. Okay, so suggestions, faculty, staff, students getting together and trying to figure out, well, what can we do? What can we do with this then? Somebody said, well, we could fund it under private support. Well, okay, that's one suggestion. I still say get rid of it, but if you want to fund it under private support. Well, that would be better than what they're doing, but I still would like to get rid of it. Next person said, could we continue the office but under a new name? My answer would be then that's not getting rid of the office. Just changing the name does not get rid of the office. You got to think of the spirit of what the Wyoming House and Senate was trying to get done, which is get rid of the office and the programs. Some did suggest in this meeting, we just need to close it all down. Thank you. That was the point of all of this. Just close it down and just run the school. Or maybe they could close the office and redirect federally required duties elsewhere. So in other words, go ahead and play the federal game in some other way so we can keep that federal money rolling in. I would still say get rid of the federal money because that's manipulation. If you don't do what we say, we're going to withhold this money. Then keep your money, I would say. All right. So the UW president directed a working group to find ways that diversify, equity, and inclusion program activities and functions could be organized and funded within the university to, quote, make them most effective. So, and I'll tell you what I think they really should do at the end of this. But in continuing these programs and funding them, even privately, the group acknowledges it would not be in the spirit of the legislative decision. So they actually are watching that. Now, DEI, as I mentioned at the beginning, is expensive. They figure it would cost about $500,000 annually just for the operator of DEI and the staff. How does it cost that much money to run this? I'd really like to know. What are their salaries looking like here? How many people are we talking? Because that really sounds like a lot of money to me. $500,000 to run this program. Now, for the office to run into the future, total they would like about $12.5 million for years ahead. The opposing side argues that the colleges and universities have operated for decades and some longer without such programs, and they did fine. And they don't believe that diversity, equity, inclusion is making things better, but making it far worse. So here's going back to what I had said when all of this had started. I just want to update you on what the university is doing. They're having meetings about this because the money was cut back. Like I said, the governor cut part of it, but not all of it. He vetoed, so there's only a partial cut. To my understanding, unless I got something wrong, my understanding is the office with the diversity director and staff is closed. They're gone. But there's certain DEI programs, including classes and so on, and other programs that will continue. All right. Here's how I would handle it if I were president of the university. And same way when I was an employer, because, at times in my life I was the employer. And I was very plain with my employees about how we're going to do business to avoid any problems. Because if you've ever been an employer, you know there's problems with your employees from time to time. There's personality conflicts and so on. And I told people it's real simple. When you show up for work, you're here to perform a task. I hired you to perform this task. Get to your workstation, do the job. Okay, and when you're done, I'll pay you and you go home. And that's it. Okay? So whatever personal problems that you're having, I'm sorry to hear that, but don't bring them to work. You put those aside and you show up because you need to make a living so you can deal with your personal problems. So put everything aside, leave it all at home, show up for work, get to your station, do your job, and when it's over, then you can go back to whatever you have going on. If you're someone who's into a whole lot of drama, if you're someone who likes to solve political and social issues, whatever the case is, you're very politically active, let's say. That's great. Show up to work on time, sit down at your station, perform the task, and when you're done, I'll pay you and go home. And that's it. That's what you do. So that way there's no conflict in the workplace because everybody's focused on what they're supposed to be doing. And I would say the same for students going to university. You picked a certain task. Yeah, there's a job you want. There's a career path that you have in mind. If you don't have a career path in mind, what are you doing in college? Just taking classes at random? No. Have a career path in mind. Show up for class. Do your work. Okay. When you're all done, if you passed everything, we'll give you your diploma and you go home. You focus on what you're here for. All this other nonsense that's going on, put it away. If you're into political and social activism, do that off campus on your own time. Not on campus. Do it off campus on your own time. Same thing to the college professors. If you're into activism as a college professor, do that off campus on your own time. Keep it off campus. Show up, teach your class, educate these young people so they can be successful, and we'll pay you for that if you're a professor. That's it. That way we don't need all of this. It works out a whole lot better. But yeah, I'm one of those who believes that the whole model of diversity, equity, and inclusion is not actually, it does the opposite of all of that. It has been my experience, and it hasn't been good. Hi, Eddie John. Every time you say DEI, I think of the old Three Stooges short, where they were the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Well, yeah. Let's Wake Up Wyoming.
Woke Radio, WOKE. Your donations keep us going, so go borrow some money from Mom and send it our way.
Got something to say? Call 888-97-WOODS or chat with Glenn on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app from K2 Radio.
$7:21's the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Thursday. Real quick here, just an update. You familiar with the 5-second rule? When you drop your food, if you pick it up within 5 seconds, it's okay. You can eat it. Okay. Due to inflation, that's been extended to 15 seconds. That may jump to 30 real soon. I'll keep you up to date on that. Morning, she said. He's in Judah. And I was reading that story about Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office being defunded at University of Wyoming, and university trying to figure out how they can keep some of those programs going he says, Wildfile disgustingly biased view on all this drives me crazy. Yeah. Well, Wildfile, I do remember some time ago I got into a discussion with one of the editors at Wildfile, this a few years back. And I'd said, you guys can be really biased sometimes. And he scoffed at me. We're not biased. Oh, hell yeah, you are. Especially when it gets to things like climate change. Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Now, I don't mind that if they want to go ahead and put an opinion section on your website, Wildfile, and put those in the opinion section and call it opinion. But don't try to pass it off as news, because it's not. All right? Just be honest about who you are. In fact, let me real quick, before I go on to the next story here, let me see, in my Wyoming news folder down to Wildfile, and they're currently trying to fundraise a little bit. So, let me see, they've been around for, 16 years now. And their website says, supporting in-depth, independent, investigative news coverage for Wyoming. Okay. Access is free, subscription is free. They write, as a nonprofit organization, we rely on support from donors like you who believe in access to fact-based journalism should be available to all. See, the problem is, though, they're bias-based journalism. That's what I have a problem with. Because they say we're fact-based. They're leftist bias, just like Wyoming Public Media is leftist bias. But they will tell you we are not. Let me show you how you are. All right, which is a shame, because I would like to have them be a right down the middle of the road news organization, much more fact-based, not what they're doing right now. I'd love to have that. I really would. All right, lawmaker. Now, I got to be careful, because speaking of Wyoming Public Media, this is one of their stories from Wyoming Public Radio. Lawmakers okayed $2 million for cloud seeding program. Now, I say this with a little trepidation because I know someone who works with this program, and I like her. But I want her to have to find different work because, well, here's the story. Scientists, watering officials, and other civic leaders believe seeding clouds can help Wyoming in its water stories as drought, or what some scientists call aridification, continues. During the final days of the budget session, lawmakers gave $10 million to Wyoming's Development Office to fund cloud seeding programs they hope will help mitigate the impacts of the ongoing drought in western United States. So, by the way, the ongoing drought, we keep getting drier because that's what the West does. Remember, at one point, Wyoming used to be at the bottom of an inland sea. It was part of underneath an ocean. At one point, Wyoming was a swamp with crocodiles. Wyoming, among other western states, keeps geologically getting pushed higher. And as we get higher, we get drier. As part of a natural process here. But okay. During the final days of the budget session, they gave $2 million. Representative John Conrad, Republican Mountain View, advocated for the program during the budget session. He urged his peers to do whatever they can to ensure that the state has enough water. We know that cloud seeding has a positive impact on snowpack. No, we don't know that. That's the problem. I remember just a few years ago, I was at it was during an air show that was going on in Cheyenne, Wyoming, with the National Guard during Frontier Days. And I had a chance to meet the gentleman who's in charge of the cloud seeding program, which goes through the University of Wyoming. And I flat out asked him, do we know that this works? And he kind of rolled his eyes. No, we don't know if it works or doesn't work. And that actually made a news story picked up by several news organizations. Does cloud seeding work? And they don't know if it does or doesn't. So when I hear Representative John Conrad, Republican Mountain View, say, we know that cloud seeding has a positive impact on snowpack. No, we don't know that. Brian Schumann, professor with the Department of Geological and Geophysics at the University of Wyoming, his research expertise in how climate change has impacted and water resources and ecological processes throughout Wyoming. He said since the 1950s, Wyoming has had a significant drop in snowfall and snowpack. Northwest Wyoming is the headwaters that feed the Colorado River, he says. Okay, so there's been a drop in precipitation overall. Well, true. That's not untrue. That is true. But again, Wyoming keeps getting higher and drier. That's what happens out west. Now, maybe someday that trend will reverse. And we did see that in last year. This winter was actually pretty wet. I know some of you are saying, not real. Well, no, we're getting a lot of the wet now. For the western part of Wyoming, it was really wet and snowy. Cloud seeding uses silver oxide to enhance crystal production within the clouds. Program was launched back in 2014. Since then, it has been expanded to the Medicine Bow area and Sierra Madre Range. Dr. Jeff French, Associate Professor with the Department of Atmospheric Science, University of Wyoming, his expertise in this. Some of the recent research focused on the impacts of cloud seeding. He says we can see somewhere between 2 and 8% increase in snowpack when we see the clouds. Now, this goes against, though, when I was speaking to the gentleman who runs the program, who was saying we don't know if it works or not. And my argument has been all along, if you don't know for sure that it's working, I mean, let's look at the data. If you don't know that it's working, then stop doing it. You should know for sure that it is working. I mean, without a doubt that this works. Because if you're not sure without a doubt, then stop doing it. And I know you, but we really need the water. I understand, but you don't know if it works or not. So stop doing it then. Only do what you know that works, not this. And by the way, this part of the country has been getting drier for a very long period of time. Remember, we used to be a swamp. Not while humans lived here, but that's just part of the natural processes of living out here and part of what we have to deal with. Coming up on 7:30, local news coming your way right after the local news update on the weather forecast. You and I get back into it again. Speaking of weather, 7:45, Don Day will be with us to take a good look at your weather forecast through the weekend, which actually is cool. I mean, really cool weather. I mean, not like, hey, cool, man, but I mean, bring a jacket. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
By Sunday.
Now, Glenn Woods fits in your pocket with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030, K2 Radio.
Okay, this is not surprising at all here. Real quick before I get on to the next topic. That ridiculously large television they put in the studio over here. Let's see, it says House debating Iran's drone and missile attack on Israel. So it's a House of Representatives debating this. There's pretty much nobody there. There's a few people up there speaking back and forth on the left and right side of the aisle, but the entire House of Representatives is pretty much empty. I don't know what the point of the debate is if this is what they're doing. All right. So here's one for you, and I don't know if he understands. I bet he doesn't. Headline is, Biden vows to protect the U.S. steel industry. Hold on. I'm going to read this, then I'm going to drop the other shoe, okay? President Joe Biden wants a triple tariff rate on Chinese steel and aluminum if investigators confirm allegations of the country's unfair trade practices. Quote, the backbone of America's steel spine, or in other words, the backbone of America is a steel spine, he said, during a visit in Pittsburgh. Biden wants the U.S. trade representatives to increase by 7.5% regulations, et cetera, et cetera. It's a final stop on his 3-day tour across Pennsylvania, his native state. And I'm proud to be the most pro-union president in history, he says. In March, the United Steelworkers praised the president for speaking out against $14.9 billion offer from a Japanese company to buy U.S. steel. It needs to be a totally American company, he says. Okay, so I said I was going to drop the other show. Hey, Mr. President. I don't think he's listening, but I'll do it anyway, as if he is. Yeah, excuse me, Mr. President. Yeah, over here in the back in Wyoming. Yeah, you can see the hand raising up there? Okay. In order to make steel, you need coal. And some petroleum, too. You, Mr. President, among other people, want to keep it all in the ground, no more drilling and digging. Now, anyone who knows anything about making steel knows that one of the things that has to happen is we need to raise the temperature of the furnace to a really, really high temperature. And what does that is coal. In fact, even to make, there was a plant that was making, I'm trying to remember what state this is. I can look it up. But a state, I want to say it was Kentucky. They were going to start making giant battery systems for wind and solar power. This battery production facility was going to take a lot of electricity to do this. A lot. In order to produce the electricity to do this, there was a coal-fired power plant they were about to deactivate. They decided they couldn't do it because they wouldn't have enough power to run the battery facility. Mr. President, if you really want to get coal off the table, then you're not going to be able to make steel. You can't do it. And anyone who also knows about the production of the production of steel, knows that you're going to have some petroleum in the mix as well when you see what the process is and what kind of machines are used and et cetera, to make steel. So it takes coal and it takes petroleum. Now, the president says he wants to keep coal and oil in the ground. I'd like to know how you plan to do that, Mr. President, and make steel and aluminum, as he says, an American-made product. So yet another reason why we can't shut down coal plants and we can't stop drilling for oil. See, Michelle is in Cheyenne. Curious if seeding clouds uses silver oxide. Is that putting silver in our water? I don't think so. Good question, though, but I really don't think so. Now, what it does is, I understand the process is this. Part of what makes clouds is there has to be little particulate matters of something, like even dust, has to be present. The water needs something to cling to, essentially. And so one of the things that's easy to do is silver oxide because it'll stay up there. And it's in really trace amounts. And so the idea of cloud seeding is any water vapor that is up there will cling to that and then fall because it has something to cling to and it's heavier. So we're getting more water out of the cloud because we put silver oxide up there, giving it something to cling to and add weight to, which brings it down to the ground. But as far as what effect that has on your drinking water, I don't think it really does. But again, I'd be happy to look into that a little bit more. All right, speaking of weather, it is snowing just a tad where I am right now. I got Don Day coming up next. Wake up.
Local and mobile across Wyoming and beyond with the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
7:45 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off we go to talk to Don Day about the weather. So, Don, in the Casper area, around that area, I know that it just was a light snow all day yesterday, most of the night. It's doing it right now, although really nothing has stuck.
Yeah, that's typical for this time of year. It's coming down at a rate to where it's not going to accumulate much. And even though it's cloudy and chilly in many areas, even early in this part of the day, that April sun puts a lot of radiant energy even through these low clouds. And so it's hard to get things to stick. And remember, it was pretty darn warm before this colder weather came on in. So a lot of the pavements, a lot of the ground is still warm.
Okay. Now, this at some point, though, I expect we get partly cloudy later today. Where do we go from here?
Well, it depends on where you are, as I always like to tell you, because we're getting clearing up north, and we'll see that clearing trend work slowly from the north to the south. The southeast corner, Laramie and Cheyenne, will be pretty much in the clouds and occasional flurries all day today. And that'll be the part of the state tomorrow and into Saturday that may get a little more light snow right on the edge of that Colorado-Wyoming border area. While the rest of the state, it's just going to be cold. There'll be a few flurries around. It's just going to be very chilly out there.
Okay. I do notice when I look at the forecast, it does maybe even dip just a little bit more than it is now before we start to warm up this weekend.
Yeah, it's pretty much going to stay cold through Saturday. The only part of the state that's going to really warm up Saturday will be the far west and southwest. The cold air that's here is backed up against the divide, and it's going to get held there for a good 72 hours. Now, we will see a pretty big warm up on Sunday. That cold air really begins to retreat early Sunday morning. So I think we'll be able to salvage the weekend, one day of this weekend, with some good weather on Sunday.
Okay. Now, I still, though, when I look at next week, that actually makes me kind of excited that we have a nice warm up there. But do we still get a little bit of wet now and then during next week?
Next week, we're going to have a big high-pressure ridge build in between Tuesday and Thursday. And that's going to bring in some air from the desert states, bring a big warm-up to the state and region. But there's going to be another low coming off the California coast late next week. And what we'll see is going to be April showers, afternoon and evening shower and thunderstorm activity as early as Thursday, but certainly by Friday and Saturday, we'll start to move into the state. It looks like, at least initially, on the warm side of that storm, it'll be that threat of showers and thunderstorms and nothing too bad. But once that storm jumps over the divide, which is going to be early next week, is when we'd want to watch out for maybe a bigger change.
Yeah,
but
okay. So
there's a nice warm up coming make a lot of folks happy next week.
I'm just going to say then we're not out of this yet.
As I will say many, many times, as I've said many, many times, you got to wait till after Mother's Day weekend. Yeah. And even then, you're not out of the woods, because then that Memorial Day weekend can be wonderful or awful.
Right.
So,
all right. Thank you, Don. Don Day with Day Weather. Well, you know what the drill is at this time of year. We've been through this before, so nobody should be surprised. And, yeah, I like to watch the weather app, but I don't take it as gospel. Never really should. All right, so head on over to Laramie, Wyoming, where David Settle is hanging in there for Frank Gambito. Let me see. I'll go ahead and call this up for you here. People get pulled over every so often for speeding. And
correct.
I love the excuse of, I'm speeding because basically I'm trying to catch up to everybody. That's how far behind I am. There's nobody else on the road. Yeah, because I'm way back there. Here are some of the best speeding excuses according to Forbes magazine. I didn't know that I was speeding, 26%. Okay. Medical emergency, 25%. That doesn't say whether that's true or not, but okay. Everyone else was going the same speed as me. Now, believe it or not, that's only used 22% of the time.
Oh, no way.
I would expect that to be higher.
Yeah, I would. I agree. It should be higher.
Right. Late for work, 21%.
Oh, I can see that.
This is another one I thought should be higher. I have to use the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that should be 70% of the time. But, all right. Late for an interview, 16%.
Ooh.
Late to pick up or drop off child, that's only 15%. I didn't see the sign is 14%. This is funny. Late for a court appointment, well, you're about to get another one. Late for a doctor appointment, both those are 13%. Late to meet my friends, why even try that? 12%. Yeah. I'm bringing home hot food and I didn't want it to get cold. 11%. Late to meet. I don't know. Late to meet husband or wife as 11%. Late for a date is 10%. Late for a funeral. 10%. Well, he's not going. The dead guy's not going anywhere.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Late for a concert, sporting event, or dinner reservation. That's only 9% of the time.
Okay.
It's okay.
Wow.
Well, for me, late for a sporting event depends on how expensive the tickets were.
Yeah, especially nowadays. All right. Thank you very much, Glenn. Good morning, everybody. Well, our latest YO Preps Coaches and Media soccer and softball polls came out on Wednesday. We do have a couple changes in the boys' ranks as we have a pair of new number ones. Torrington takes over the top spot in 3A boys, pushing Worland to second. Green River's now third, then Cody and Powell. Kelly Walsh actually has the number one ranking in both 4A boys and girls now, as their boys overtook Cheyenne Central for number one. Then it's Jackson, Sheridan, and Thunder Basin on the boys' side. The biggest change on the girls' side was Lander went from unranked to second. They've won 3 straight matches over ranked opponents. Cody still held on to first, ahead of Lander, then Worland, Green River, and Douglas. Kelly Walsh is on top in 4A girls, and then it's Jackson, Laramie, Campbell County, and Natrona County in the top 5. As for the latest softball rankings, Wheelan made a little history as they break into the top 5 for the first time in program history at number 5. Thunder Basin gets back to the top spot after their win over Cheyenne East last weekend. Campbell County is now second. Cheyenne East fell to third. Cody held on to fourth. You can check out the soccer and softball rankings at YLPreps.com or on the YLPreps app. Speaking of soccer, Cheyenne East and Cheyenne Central squared off in the capital city on Wednesday in the girls' game. Ended in a 2-2 draw. It was 1-0 Central at halftime, and then the two teams combined for 3 goals in about a 6-minute span, all in the last 10 minutes of the match. On the boys' side, Central shut out East almost on an own goal. 1-0 was the final score in that one for the second-ranked Indians. As for softball, Cheyenne Central defeated Cheyenne South 21-6. The Indians broke it open with 12 runs in the second inning. Izzy Kelly had 4 hits, including 2 triples and 2 RBIs. Katie Hines got the win in the circle and helped herself at the plate, going with 3 hits and 4 RBIs. There are a pair of doubleheaders scheduled for today as 5th-ranked Wheatland hosts top-ranked Thunder Basin, and 3rd-ranked East is supposed to be at Laramie. We'll see if those games get in, especially here in Laramie where it's snowing lightly right now here in the Gem City. On the soccer field, 5th-ranked Natrona girls will host Riverton at 4, followed by Riverton and Natrona boys at 6 o'clock tonight at Cheney Alumni Field in Casper. You also have Star Valley at Evanston, Torrington going to Newcastle, and Rollins will be in Douglas with their boys at 3 o'clock and their girls at 5 o'clock. And yes, the Rockies lost again yesterday. They got swept in Philadelphia by the Phillies. But I'll say this much. It was 7-6. They did come back and make it a game late. They're off today, by the way, so the Rockies can't win or lose, which is actually a win for them. But they're not the worst team in baseball, Glenn.
Yes.
There is one team that has a worse record and another team that has the same record.
Let's talk about them next hour. Meantime, Dave, you and I are going to get together with some listeners to buy the Rockies because I hear they made the bargain bin as damaged goods.
Is that like the $1.50 tub or something?
That's about right, yeah. We got coupons. So, all right.
There you go.
Next hour, Wake Up Wyoming. Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's snowing where I am. Not sure about where you are, but that's springtime for you in the state of Wyoming. Special sponsor this hour.
Today's show is sponsored by Junebug Berry Muffins. Are they berries? Are they June bugs? Are they either? Taste and find out.
I just know I'm keeping bugs out of my diet because I'm not going to eat them to save the planet. All right, full disclosure here. So, Miss Mary has taken a few days off. So, today, tomorrow, she's out. And she really does deserve the break. She does more than just babysit me. So, she really does need the break, and so let her go. Now, the way the system here, the phone system is set up, as you know, she's in a completely different room. She'll screen the calls and then send them on to me. And there's a system here which I look at a computer screen. It's called the stack. And she lines up the calls on the stack, and I can see who's calling from where, what information about them, and stuff like that. When she's gone, she's supposed to be able to send the phone system over directly to the studio. So if you call, the phones just ring in front of me here, and it doesn't go through anybody else. But, of course, you know what it's like. When computer systems update, isn't that evil? You got everything at your home computer exactly the way you like it, or your phone, and then they do an update, and it screws everything up. She spent like a good part of 3 days trying to figure out how to transfer, along with her other work, how to transfer the phone system over. And so, two things. I am here unsupervised. That's scary. And I don't have any phones. You can still message me, like a lot of people doing. Steve and Casper, Bert and Cheyenne. Big Red is over there in Hawk Springs. I mean, on and on it goes. So if you want to text me, go ahead and grab your phone, use the Wake Up Wyoming app, which is free to download at your app store, and just hit chat and send me a text message. I've been answering people that.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move. Or Dave. Don't call it all right now. Just go ahead and send me text messages, and I'll answer to that. Real quick, I put up a little meme on my own social media, which said, due to inflation, when it comes to food, the 5-second rule, you drop something, if you pick it up within 5 seconds, it's okay to eat. That's now 15 seconds. Immediately, people started upping that number. Well, with inflation, it's got to be at least 35 seconds by now. If you really think about that, I mean, how much did that thing cost, whatever it is you dropped? How much did that cost you? Are you taking your chances? You probably are. I had some other stories lined up for you, but these news items just came up, and I wanted to get to both of them real fast. Here's the first one, which the headline alone, I thought, Education Secretary, this is Biden's Education Secretary, vows to shut down largest Christian university in the U.S. This is one of the reasons I say don't take money from the federal government, but here's why. After Department of Education Secretary vowed to shut down Grand Canyon University, the largest Christian university in the U.S., officials are pushing back, telling Fox Digital the crackdown is deeply held in bias. He made comments during a House Appropriations Committee hearing about cracking down on the university. They're working to shut it down because it's a predatory for-profit school. Well, just because they're for-profit doesn't mean they're predatory. It's okay to be a for-profit school. And he doesn't like that they're basically the way they has that more conservative message. But all right. Last year, the department took certain action against the university as predatory for-profit college over the school's failure to accurately disclose its costs to students, driving up the true cost of requiring them to pay for all sorts of courses that they don't need before they graduate. Does that sound familiar? Like any other university out there right now. I've complained about that for a very long time. Especially your major Ivy League universities. How they jack up the price. I mean, greatly jack up the price. Making kids take all sorts of classes that have nothing to do with the profession they choose to get into. So if he's going to go after the Christian university, what about these other universities? Some of which get government funds for all sorts of different reasons. All right. Now, there's that one. Then there's this story. Retired teacher sues Pennsylvania borough, I think it's Pennsylvania, after he was convicted of putting a for sale sign on his truck window. I wrote a book called Generic Bill. Genericville is about the worst examples of homeowners associations that you've ever. It's a novel, but it's based on real homeowners association horror stories. So as you read the book, the characters are fictional, the neighborhood's fictional, but the homeowners association horror stories are actually all true. It's called Genericville. I do know that if you're in Casper, Wyoming, the Windy City Books has a copy of that. It's also on Amazon, too. But the reason I mention that is because a lot of times city councils, for example, get just as bad. Story says a recently retired school teacher is suing Pennsylvania borough over a local ordinance after he was found guilty of putting up a for sale sign on his legally parked pickup truck. Quote, "We put you in office as judge and state representatives to protect our rights," he said. And we've seen things like people getting tickets for putting a for sale sign on their vehicle, which violates their First Amendment rights. And by the way, what would they think is so bad about that? Okay, so the guy has a pickup truck, and it's the kind of for sale sign you can get at your basic hardware store, let's say. Nothing special about it, just, with the orangey kind of letters and the black background, for sale. And then it leaves this space at the bottom so you can put a phone number or something like that. That's it. We've all seen that, right? So he teamed up with the Institute for Justice, filing a lawsuit seeking permanent injunction from prohibiting his borough from enforcing the ordinance against traditional low-cost and effective personal commercial speech. He said, I really can't think of a good reason why they have this policy in the first place. I'm not quite sure why they would be so concerned about a car with a for sale sign in its window. This is, to me, every bit as bad as there was a neighborhood I remember in Florida, and it was built for people of a certain age. In other words, if you've retired, you can live there. Anyone below a certain age can't live there. It's only really for retired people. And it fits the title of my book, Genericville, because pretty much every house was exactly the same design, right? And so people who have retired and moved there, at some point maybe want to sell their home and move on. They're not going to be there till they die. And a big controversy erupted because they're not allowed to put a for sale sign in their front yard. Now, the name of the community was Oak Run. So they said, well, to show people, because we want something tasteful. I don't see what's wrong with a for sale sign, but all right. There's a wooden oak leaf on a stick. Put that in your yard. That lets people know the house is for sale. But they wouldn't allow for sale signs. Talk about a bunch of busybodies. Okay, well, he lived in this borough in Northampton County, Pennsylvania, for over 40 years. Spent the last 20 years teaching high school geometry biology. At the start of his school year, he decided to retire and to go teach English in the Philippines for a year, which sounds really interesting. In October, he planned to sell his 1987 Chevrolet truck as he prepared for this trip. And I'm looking at this truck. It's an old rust bucket of a truck. The kind that you're really proud of, the rust. The rust makes it look even better. He said, I was retiring. And I was finally going to move to another county, so there was urgency to sell my truck. I wanted to sell some item to not have to take with me. After failing to find any prospective buyers online, he decided just to do the old school for sale sign on the truck. And after he did that, he found a citation on his truck. He said, when I pulled the ticket filed from underneath the windshield, wiper blade looked at it. I was actually receiving a ticket for putting a for sale sign and then advertising my car for sale. He said, I was angry. I wasn't angry. I wasn't mad. I was just trying to take it in. It's like, is this for real? Am I getting a ticket for putting a for sale sign on my truck? He immediately removed the sign and began to park the truck on his lawn. Since his house doesn't have a driveway, he luckily was able to sell the Old Savior truck to someone who had seen the sign before and came back. He said, I just paid it and wanted to get over with. He just paid the fine, wanted to get over with. But now he's beginning to fight back with some people. You shouldn't be able to do this. It was $123.75 plus court costs just for putting a for sale sign on his truck, which has been a common practice in America for how long? This is what happens when you allow city councils to meet too much. They come up with stuff like this, which is why I say your city council and county commission shouldn't be able to meet all that often, because they become busybodies, like a homeowners association, which is why homeowners associations should not be allowed to meet all that much, because this is the kind of stuff they come up with, which is why I wrote the book Genericville, just based on true stories.
The North American Karen, a wild beast that's dangerous alone but deadly in numbers. When gathered together, they form what is known as a homeowners association. This HOA peruses the gated community on the hunt for a vulnerable manager. But today, their vulnerability will be exposed. A Tyrannus homeboy sapien. The Karens freeze and huddle together in fear. Their phones on video mode, at the ready to call for help from their closest friend of the jungle, the security officesaurus. But the harmless Tyrannus goes about his business, paying little attention to the Karens. But it's too late. The Karens have already been frightened. They turn and make their escape. Rarely do the Karens find themselves on the receiving end of fear. But today, they are reminded that the world is not their home. They trot home to their husbandus flaccidus to complain that their neighborhood is going to.
If it's happening in Wyoming, it's on Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods from K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
6:24 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. See a couple of Wyoming stories here. You may have seen the billboards around if you've been driving around the state, but it's official now. Senator Barrasso is running for re-election, not surprising. So, Cowboy State Daily, U.S. Senator John Barrasso officially announced Wednesday he's running for re-election for a fourth term. Quote, I want to continue to fight for you. Okay, Barrasso said in a video announcement for his re-election. His announcement isn't a surprise. The story says he's been laying the groundwork for his re-election campaign for some time. And also he's trying to take the next step up in the Senate as well as running for a Republican whip. And so far, he is the only person in the Senate who is up for that position for the Republicans. Let's see. There's more about there. Then there's Trump has endorsed him. To my knowledge, there's only one other Republican candidate running against him. Let's see. Casper resident Reed Rasner is Barrasso's lone opponent so far in the Republican primary, building much of his campaign around his support for Trump and even using the same style and color image as logo as the Trump campaign. Rasner claims that there are multiple straw polls around the state showing him beating Barrasso, but did not respond to multiple questions for Cowboy State to provide those polls. Barrasso won 67% of the vote in the general election race for U.S. Senate in 2018, 65% in the Republican primary. Okay, so and prior to serving the Natrona County, Wyoming Senate for 24 years, also orthopedic surgeon as well. All right, and another story I have for you, Casper firm is asking for those people on the gravel pit side of it. Okay, here we go again with the gravel pit. This is Natrona County. Again, Cowboy State Daily. The uproar over proposed gravel mine on state-owned land at the base of Casper Mountain continues to resonate throughout the region and grew even more pronounced Tuesday as word spread about the company filing for its permit. Locals filled the Natrona County Commission meeting Tuesday, asking commissioners to reject the gravel operation and protect what they say they see as a prized and vulnerable section of public land. And also, they like the idea of being able to go visit that area. They like the idea of tourism in the area, but also there's neighborhoods right there. I think that was a big part of the problem, too. There's neighborhoods right there. So, okay, Prism Logistics manager, whose company has obtained the lease for several sections of state-owned land at the base of the mountain, told Cowboy State Daily on Wednesday they have filed for limited mining operations on a portion of the area known as Section 2. That was last week that they did that. He also said the company has heard the backlash to its plan to mine and wants to minimize the impact. So they say, we've initiated that process with the state. We want to start in an area that will minimize any impact on water, and we want to minimize impacts on downsizing structures of, for downwind structures for people. We want to keep it close to the road so we will have minimal impact. He said the company has chosen the north half of the Northeast Section 2, mostly in Lot 2, and some in Lot 1. He said the company plans to go public with its plans to try to educate the community and calm fears. So, all right. Local people not convinced, as you might imagine. Jude and Casper, of course, one of those, and Rose, and there's some other people. And I know that they have packed the meeting hall over this one, so we'll see what they can do. And it's not as easy as pulling out and stopping as you might think just because they've gone so far in the process. We just won't do it. Well, after going so far in the process, there's a little more to it than just saying we're just not going to. But that's what they're working on now. That's the latest. Speaking of latest, news time coming up right after news. Update on your weather forecast. You and I get back into it for a nice long segment. I was about to give the phone number, but I can't do that right now. It just wanted to automatically come out, but I can't do that right now. So wake up, Wyoming.
by Sunday.
Wake up, Wyoming. Glenn Woods is live on AM 1030 K2 Radio and the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
8:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So, okay, this is a really offbeat question. But bear with me for a moment. I go to a lot of different websites every single day that I just sort of monitor. If you're to look at the files of websites that I go to, you might wonder, why are you following Flat Earth Society? Are you a flat earther? No. But it is funny when they post something, and I love just reading it to monitor what those nut jobs are saying. Another site, Everyday Feminism. It is every bit as bad as it sounds. Now, this is a nonprofit group. And they even have a note at the top of the website. Dear beloved reader, we're going to be real with you. We're asking you to join our membership program so we can become fully financially sustainable. Have to throw in sustainable. And you get cool perks, too. And avoid this site shutting down. Every year we reach over 6.5 million people. I doubt that. Around the world with our intersectional feminist articles. So again, got to throw in the buzzwords there. But we now depend 100% on reader support to keep going. If everybody gave only $12, we could raise enough money for this entire site for just one day. I mean, to pay everybody who's doing this. For the price of a single lunch, you could save us. See, I worry that Everyday Feminism will go out of business. Because I go to their site every single day looking for things like what I'm about to read you. I'm going to show you how important they are. So we're making an independent feminist media site led entirely by the people of color. Also, wait a second, hang on, back up. We're making an independent feminist website led entirely by people of color. Are you saying no white people allowed? Although white is a color, but you get my point. If everyday feminism has been useful to you, please take a minute to keep us alive. So here's the kind of articles they write. This one this morning really caught me. 4 signs you are culturally appropriating Buddhism and why it's important not to. Now, before I go on, did you know that? Did you know you were culturally appropriating Buddhism? Now, for some of you, for some of you guys out there, it's just because you're fat. You got that belly. That's culturally appropriating Buddhism. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know what they think, but that's what I think, okay? 4 signs you're culturally appropriating Buddhism and why it's important not to. Okay. So they write, imagine this. You're a practicing Christian. You believe in God and Jesus, and you go to church every Sunday. You pray before bed. You even help at church Sunday. Well, if you are, you're not reading Everyday Feminism, but all right. And you walk into the entrance of your workplace one day, and you see a statue depicting Jesus, his head sitting on the floor and decorating the hallway. How do you feel? Well, that's a true story, except not Jesus, it's Buddha. See, some people like to buy Buddhas and put them up decoratively, right? Buddhism is a religion practiced by nearly 500 million people worldwide. Okay. However, it's taken up something of a cool, marketable, consuming thing. Consumers love it. It's being sold. Okay, so how do you know if you're culturally appropriating Buddhism? And it's self-serving, you know. Nothing wrong with serving yourself, but okay. I'm not going to knock mindfulness. It's incredibly important part of Buddhism to be present and intentional with your thoughts and actions. However, I'm reading what it says here. When mindfulness and presence are used exclusively as a way to physically improve an individual's life, we're missing the point of Buddhism. For instance, Whole Foods. Whole Foods has these popcorns, flavored popcorns, and on the cover of the bag, there's a picture of Buddha. Kind of a nice picture, too. And they serve chips like that as well, too. Are you using Buddhist principles and catchphrases? You might wonder what those are. Unwind, chill, zen. Do you light candles and incense and even use lotion for the same effect? See, you're culturally appropriating Buddhism if you do that. Let's see. Your sacred objects are purely decorative. Some people like to decorate, especially at Berkeley, prayer flags are used like confetti lanterns. Oh, those lanterns and lights that you can hang at dinner parties, they have Buddhist and Tibetan backgrounds. So if you're going to have a party this summer, don't hang those lanterns up there because that's a Buddhist thing, and that's cultural appropriation, you know. Let's see, finally, you're not connecting with cultural appropriation as a form of suffering because cultural appropriation of Buddhism creates suffering for marginalized communities. It tells us that the items and beliefs we hold dear are sacred, but meaningless, though, to some people who just, how dare you? Just you want to go ahead and hang lanterns? You grab a bag of potato chips and Buddhas on the front. How dare you do stuff like this? Let's go back to the title. Signs you're culturally appropriating Buddhism and why it's important not to. I tell you what, next time you see somebody wearing a cowboy hat, and you've seen this, but they didn't earn that cowboy hat the Wyoming way, you accuse them of cultural appropriation. You go ahead and do that. If you see people wearing cowboy boots, but they're just doing it for decoration because they like cowboy boots, what if someone's driving a pickup truck, but they don't actually use that pickup truck for work? Isn't that cultural appropriation? Yeah. See, they worry about culturally appropriating Buddhism, but they don't worry about culturally appropriating things out west like you guys like. For that matter, being an island boy who grew up on a tropical island, when people who've never been to a tropical island start singing Margaritaville, oh, I get so PO'd. I mean, I just can't tell you. How dare you? You've never even had a margarita, have you? You ever put your toes in the sand on a summer day? Yeah? No? Oh, okay. Isn't that cultural appropriation? But they only care about it when it's people like Buddhists, for example. That's everyday feminism for you. There are people who spend their... And by the way, you should be supporting their website, or they're going to go out of business. And they're not going to write wonderful articles like that every single day to help influence people across the globe like they think they're doing. I really do think it's one really lonely chick in an apartment writing these articles all by herself with nothing better to do. I don't have any proof of that, but whenever I look at the website, Everyday Feminism, that's what I think of. Morning, Jay. Jay sending me a note. See, latest edition of Eyesore, Us Rising, top 20-mile wind turbines. Okay. Have you noticed that someone wants to stick a shovel in the ground? Okay, yeah, I'll read your note coming up next hour because that's an interesting point. Jay wants to talk about the eyesores of wind turbines, but, you know, as the difference between what? When someone tries to put in like a natural gas well or something like that?
Welcome to Woke Radio WOK. Let's look at today's calendar and see what we're offended by. Or you can go outside and play it by ear. Just make sure everybody feels as miserable as you.
Hope. Start your day the right way. Wake up, Wyoming, with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
8:48 is the time. Let's wake up, Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Dave, you might have noticed a lot of people just ignore signs that show danger, caution signs.
Right.
Okay.
All the time.
So I'd notice if I put the sign up that's a little more entertaining, it gets a little more notice. Like, touching this will cause your death and it will hurt the entire time you're dying. See, that's a little bit better, right? Okay.
Yeah, that does get a little more notice.
I might have to buy this one. Warning, you're the reason we have warning signs.
That would be perfect.
That would be, yeah. Warning, this machine does not know the difference between metal and flesh and doesn't care.
People just don't pay attention, do they?
No, I like this one. Attention, you are not allowed to do anything that begins with, hey, you all, watch this.
Oh, good.
Let's see.
That's every, TikTok, YouTube video of dares out there of all time. Yeah, okay.
Let's see. No, that one looks too safe to me. Let's see if I can call this one up over here. Danger, it says big danger. If that isn't enough to prevent you from touching this wire fence, and by all means, go ahead. All they had to do was put up danger. You should, after that,
Yes.
Now, this one I want to put up in front of certain people. Warning, I have issues.
That could apply to a lot of people.
Yes.
Hey, I even have issues. I have my own issues. I won't be afraid to admit it. I have my own issues.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd turn back if I were you. That's a good warning sign.
Ooh.
Yeah, okay.
But then there are those who go, oh, yeah, watch me do that. That's like, I'd turn back if I were you really applies to, flooded roads, but then there's always those people.
Yeah.
There's always that one person.
Okay, caution. If you think OSHA is a small town in Wisconsin, you're in trouble. Now, this one I might need outside of my studio. Warning, visitors with no sense of humor are advised to turn back now. Management is not responsible for damage to feelings. Oh, you see, that needs to be outside my studio right now.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, Glenn. Wyoming Cowgirl basketball head coach Heather Ezell announced the addition of a pair of student athletes on Wednesday to the Cowgirl program. They'll join the program this coming fall. Logan Alvar, former standout at Kelly Walsh High School, and she's been with the Casper College Thunderbirds women's basketball program the last 2 years, is signing with the Cowgirls. She was a 2024 Region 9 All-Team member. helped the Thunderbirds to back-to-back junior college national tournament appearances and was a two-time Region 9 All-Tournament team honoree and named to the National All-Tournament team this past season. She started in 35 games, all 35 for Casper during the 2023-24 season, was second on the team in scoring at 11.1 points per game. Alvar shot over 46% from the field, grabbed 5.9 rebounds per contest, and also averaged 2.5 assists and a steal per game. So the former Kelly Walsh grad, now turned Casper College grad, joining the Cowgirl basketball program this fall. The other signee is Lana Bislick, 5'8" guard from Split, Croatia. Spent the past year at the Western Reserve Academy in Ohio with the Split team in the Croatia Premier Liga. She, in 19 games, averaged 7 points, 5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and 1.7 steals per game. She helped Croatia win the U18 European Championship Division B in 2023, and in 6 games during those championships, averaged 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 2.2 steals per game. That's Lana Bislick, 5'8" guard from Split, Croatia. So those are the two newest additions to the Cowgirl basketball program for the upcoming 2024-25 women's college basketball season. The Wyoming Cowgirl golf team finished round 2 of the Mount West Championships on Wednesday in Rancho Mirage, California, still tied for 8th place at 26 over par. Leading the charge individually, Kyla Wild, a second straight to 1 over par 73. She's at 2 over for the tournament and tied for 14th in the field of golfers. And it is Lauren Lehigh of New Mexico leads the field at 5 under par. San Jose State still has the team lead. In fact, they're up by 9 shots. They're at 8 under par as a team entering the final round coming up today. Cowgirl tennis will wrap up the regular season with a Border War matchup coming up Friday in Fort Collins against Colorado State. If the Cowgirls can win that match, they will be the 3rd seed at next week's Mount West Championships. On to the high school scene we go. In soccer yesterday, on the girls' side, Cheyenne Central and Cheyenne East played to a 2-2 draw. It was 1-0 Indians at half, and then the two teams combined for 3 goals in about a 6-minute span, all in the last 10 minutes, and ended in a 2-2 draw. On the boys' side, Cheyenne Central, they get past their rivals, Cheyenne East 1-0. And on the softball diamond, Cheyenne Central blew out Cheyenne South 21-6. A 12-run second put the Indians in front for good. Izzy Kelly had 4 hits, including 2 triples, and drove in 2. Katie Hines got the win in the circle and helped herself, going with 3 hits and 4 RBIs at the plate. And we have not heard of any postponements just yet for prep sports today, but we'll have to wait and see how Mother Nature interferes.
Okay, so when you're talking about the ladies' golf thing, here's my problem in those times I've played golf. Let's say I play a hole, and on that hole, I wind up 2 under par. The next hole, I will wind up 25 over par. Or. You've done this. I know you've done this. You hit the ball, and you're like 3 inches from the hole. So obviously you've got this, right? And then you like 25 putt it. Been there?
Not quite that bad, but pretty close, yes.
Wake up, Wyoming.
Hi, son.
Time is 9:06. It's a Thursday. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me.
Today's show is sponsored by Junebug Berry Muffins.
Yum.
Are they berries? Are they June bugs? Are they either? Taste it. Find out.
I'm not even going to try. So let's go real quick to take a look at something that came up with the Wyoming Republican Party, which I think is interesting, especially and I've asked a question similar to this. It's a Cowboy State Daily article. Radical bylaw, the title says, would let Wyoming GOP kick out members it doesn't like. Well, okay. Now, that's the headline. Let's see what it really means. Story says, the Wyoming Republican Party has taken steps to assert its position as a private, not public organization. So this weekend, the party may continue that effort when considering its biennial state convention in Cheyenne, proposed by bylaws submitted by the Weston County Republican Party that would allow the state party to have expansive powers to kick out members and county parties, the right to kick out their entire leadership if they see fit. Now, as I get into the story, the reason I like this is there are people, as you know, Wyoming is mostly Republican, yet how many of those Republicans should be in the Republican Party. And I mean ideologically. Is that really a Republican? Do you really fit our values? So, for example, remember Governor Freudenthal was a Democrat, but he barely fit today's Democrat Party. In fact, he really didn't like today's Democrat Party all that much. He was more moderate Democrat, which is why Wyoming put him in office twice. All right, so take our Governor Gordon. He is Democrat light as far as I'm concerned. He's not a radical Democrat, but I look at him as Democrat light, like a moderate Democrat. He's in the wrong political party. But in order to make it in Wyoming politics, he had to put an R by his name, didn't he? Okay, so the story says one of the overreaching inspirations behind the bylaws is for the state GOP to have the power to remove members deemed not adhering to the party's platform and thus illegitimate Republicans in their eyes. Some of you call them RINOS, Republican in name only. This has been frequently expressed in frustration over the years in Wyoming GOP circles. Here's a quote. A lot of people come to the party. They're not Republican, said the National Committee chairwoman. They don't believe in the Republican platform. They're not guided by what used to govern this party. The party platform is determined by delegates. Its central committee members select from county and state conventions. So, Senator Cale Case, Republican Lander, has frequently been accused of not being a real Republican by some party members, and the party censured him in 2022. He said the proposed bylaws undermine the constitutional right to vote. Some aspects of democracy are pretty important, he said. Well, no, it doesn't undermine the right to vote. He can still vote. No one's taken away his right to vote. He's just not allowed to be a member of the Republican Party if they find that he's really not a Republican. That he joined the Republican Party just because you have to put an R by your name to get elected in Wyoming. So, no, it doesn't undermine anybody's right to vote. Some of those Republicans, you know I was going to go here, would target Governor Mark Gordon, who won their most recent election by a landslide, by the way. As much as people complain about Mark Gordon, when he ran for re-election, oh my Lord, did he get a lot of votes. So you can complain about him all you want, but he did rake in a lot of votes, right? So they believe the result can at least be partially attributed to Democrats and Libertarians registering as Republicans when they vote in primary elections, which is true. He says it makes more importance than ever to show the difference. Some, like Weber, have complained about the diminished power of the Democrat Party in Wyoming, which she believes, if stronger, would make it less likely for people to want to affiliate with Republicans who don't align with the party platform. If they believe in the party's values, they should support that. So, who would you kick out first? Here's Blue Eyes in Douglas. I think having something in place to keep RINOs out is a great idea. If we don't have people out there voting to really pay attention to the candidates, they're not. Well, this is why I have that Stay Out the Vote campaign, Blue Eyes. I have that, which I'll play something from that in just a moment here, but that's because so many people really do not pay attention to who they're voting for. I've talked to many Republicans who, when it comes time to vote, they just, every name that has an R, they just check it, and they don't bother to do any homework. So anyway, Blue Eye says, absolutely, we don't need people that don't follow the mission statement. It's the same way if you have a business and you have a mission statement and your morals don't go with the company's mission. What they would like to achieve and it wasn't why they're hired. They're trying to achieve something that they're not hired for. I think it's the same way for the party. I like it. Yeah, and I do too. I like that idea of, hey, we have certain party principles in the Republican Party, and if you're not adhering to them, you're in the wrong party. And I've said on the air many times, why don't they just rip up his Republican ticket? Just grab his Republican card and just cut it up with scissors. Why is Mitt Romney in the Republican Party? I didn't like it when the Republican Party ran Mitt Romney against Obama. I voted third party. And friends of mine tried to give me a hard time about it. And I said, no, we have a Democrat running as a Democrat, Obama, and a Democrat running as a Republican, Mitt Romney. Don't forget now, Mitt Romney gave Massachusetts Romney Care, which became Obamacare. And as you've seen, the record of Mitt Romney in the Senate, his voting record, is he a Republican? So for those people who gave me a hard time for voting third party, I rest my case. I am vindicated. Mitt Romney should have had his Republican ticket torn up a long time ago, or his Republican card, if you will, torn up a long time ago. Story says there is frustration in some counties like Natrona that the executive committee is dominating the party's decisions by not convening central committee meetings. Removing a county party's executive committee could be done with 2/3 of the vote of the central committee members of the party as they create a new executive committee. This power already exists. Quote, there are abuses. These are not free and fair elections, Kay said in the impacts, if the impacts and the changes go through. They want total control access. The first change proposed in the bylaws would remove all mentions of the word membership and replace it with affiliation. This would be done for the purpose, of establishing whether someone gets to participate in a Republican Party at the pleasure of the party, not the individual. Quote, all Wyoming residents are welcome to register or affiliate with the Republican Party in the state, but only subject to the constitutional right of the party to exclude persons from the party by the bylaws or to run for certain offices. In a 2000 U.S. Supreme Court case, the court ruled that political parties have the right to private association and exclude membership. Okay, so then what would it take to remove someone? Well, if they do this, the bylaws establish affiliate committees that submits recommendations as to who should be removed from the party. This committee would consist of 25 party members appointed by the state Republican Party chair. The group would be in charge with investigating allegations made by party members. A Wyoming resident currently registered or affiliated with the party who has changed party affiliation at least once. I think this would help for those people who like to jump parties when it comes primary time. This might help with that. We see that every time we come up to primary elections, you jump from Democrat to Republican, vote Republican, then jump back. Well, you're not allowed to do that anymore, and we're not letting you in. I think in part that would solve that problem. Okay. I just want to hear more about this. I'm interested in the idea of it because, again, these are private parties. You do not have a right to join the Democrat or Republican or Libertarian parties. They're private parties. So they can make their own rules if this is the way they want to go.
Lead to cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortion. No, cognitive distortions. Haagen-Dazs dispersion. Getting further away. Cognitive distortions. I don't know what you're saying. It's when you think things are different than how they actually are. Oh, like imaginary. Kind of, but bad imaginary. No!
Yep, there you have it. A new level of crazy. And you heard it here first. Serious takes on local politics, or something like that. Tune in weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
9:23 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So I'm reading an article here by Cowboy State Daily, which are usually very good articles. And what they're talking about is the Wyoming Republican Party, at least considering an idea, we'll see if it goes through or not, but that they could kick people out of the party. Now, let's keep in mind, even the Supreme Court has ruled all political parties are private parties. You have no right to join them. They're private parties. Okay? The idea that, well, I can go ahead and join that party if I want. No, it's a private organization. They don't want you in, they don't have to let you in. And again, Supreme Court ruled that. So what the Republicans in Wyoming want to do is they like the idea of being big tent and allowing many people in. But there's a lot of people, first off, that have run for and won offices as Republicans. But when you look at their voting record, the things they say, the ideas they push, these are not Republican ideas. In which case, I wouldn't be mean to them. I mean, they would hold a committee meeting and look at that elected official's record and decide, are they in the right party? In which case, I wouldn't be mean to them. I wouldn't be nasty. I would just simply let them know, I'm sorry, but we've rescinded your membership in the Republican Party because, well, frankly, we think you're in the wrong party. Yeah, you should be in the Democrat Party. Now, I do understand that many moderate people look at today's Democrats and think they've gone so radical left, which is true. The current Democrat Party, if you look at the Democrat Party of the 1960s and 50s, for example, that's not today's Democrat Party. Okay, President Kennedy could have never been in today's Democrat Party. By today's standards, he's far too conservative. But, yeah, so there's a lot of moderates. I don't want to be a member of today's Democrat Party. They're just too nutball. True, but you're not a Republican, though. And so for those people who have taken political office in the state of Wyoming, you're not a Republican. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go from the Republican Party. You can't be a member here, especially as an elected official. And they do lay out in this story here the criteria for that. But then also, what about people who, when it gets time to vote in a primary, they switch parties and join the Republican Party, vote, and then jump back to Democrat? Now, after someone's done that a few times and even donated money to the Democrat Party, the question would have to be asked, what are you doing here? Why are you over here voting in our primary? And I've mentioned this many times before. That's not okay to do that. That's meddling in another party's primary. Why do you keep jumping party lines and meddling in our primary? Now, some Democrats will argue, well, no Democrats ran for the office of mayor or any other office for that matter in my district. It was all Republicans. So we know that the real election happens during the primary in my district. And my answer to that is it is not the Republicans' fault that the Democrats couldn't get anyone to run. All right. It's not their fault. So you better get with the Democrat Party and fix that. But again, what do you do? What are you party hopping for? You donate money to the Democrats. You vote Democrat and everything else, especially in the general election, you'll vote Democrat. But in the primary, you'll jump parties and jump back. No, you're in the wrong party. So when someone goes to pull that trick in the primaries, under these new rules, they would basically be told, you can't do that. The Republican Party is not going to let you switch into their party. You blew it. Sorry. But again, I wouldn't be mean to them. I would just say, no, you have to mind your own business. You're not a Republican. Okay. A state legislator currently registered as a Republican who has sponsored or co-sponsored a bill to oppose any Republican Party platform plank would be kicked out. These are some of the criteria. A Wyoming resident registered as a Republican who has donated money or anything of value in the last 10 years to a campaign for a candidate not affiliated with the Republican Party. These are things they're putting on the checklist. A Wyoming resident who cannot prove U.S. citizenship. That's a big one. Mothership in Casper. If Republican Party truly did their homework on Mark Gordon, he should not have been voted in the first time. I believe the people of Wyoming, as you said, because he had an R by his name, which I tend to think is the case. I've talked to people who have said that when it came election time, primary or general election, they just went down and marked the R's. They didn't even look. Finally, any person representing Wyoming in Congress who has engaged in sham congressional committees with the Democrats and fed dishonest or libelous information to the mainstream press alongside radical liberal Democrats in an effort to defeat Republican candidates or ideas and spread the Democrat fraudulent narratives. Well, you're out. So the crux of the bylaws come back to the ongoing debate, the story says, as to whether political parties are private entities. Kilcase believes the party wants to have its cake and eat it too when it comes to primaries, but I think it really does come down to these are private parties, and they can make their own rules. And if you don't like their rules, then don't join their party. Join a party whose rules you do like. If you're truly a Democrat, then join the Democrat Party and stay there. If you're believe it or not, there's a Libertarian and a Constitution Party in Wyoming. Do they more align with your beliefs? Then join it and stay there if that's what you really think. Coming up on 9:30, local news coming your way. Update on your weather forecast. Wake up, Wyoming.
Polish off that tin hat. You'll need it for this one. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Available on demand on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
.36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Thursday, so we're getting kind of close to the weekend. All right, couple of things. I know I'm going through a lot, but I'm doing a lot of house cleaning here, as I always do as we get closer to the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, of course you know, according to the cult of climate change, we're living in the end times.
So put on your respirator and let's fix that generator. And while we're out, we'll mend our fences too. See, I'm not afraid of dying, just got reasons for surviving. I want one more day in the apocalypse with you.
So let's take a look at a couple of the stories I have here. One of them is, let's go back to the 17th century. The story I have in front of me says, long time ago, this author says, when I became fascinated by the obsession people have at the time, every time we live in, there's something that makes them think they're living in the end times. If you think you're living in the end times now, so did everybody before you. One of these days, somebody will be right. He said, I hunted around for a word to sum this up. There isn't one, so I invented one. Chronoeccentricity. It's a form of eccentricity, of a fixation on the notion of impending doom in our lifetime. One of the curiosities, he says, is that almost always predicted the belief that present day has evidence of impending doom. So he went ahead and looked back to the 17th century, noting that nothing, he said, could sum up today's climate catastrophes better, since apparently the 1830s were paradise according to the cult of climate change. But if you go back and take a look at that time period, they were making all sorts of horrific climate predictions. Of course, they couldn't blame CO2. They didn't know of any such thing. He also writes, climate catastrophe is part of the human condition. It's always been there. It's a mechanism we use to distinguish one day from another, because there can be dramatic impact for our survival. Going all the way back to Roman times and earlier, there were horrific climate impacts. In the year 16, AD 16, for example, a Roman general had his fleet scattered and wrecked by a massive storm that left the survivors clinging and watching whirlwinds they thought were fantastic beasts. The Roman natural historian Pliny the Elder supplied he talked about hailstorms and whirlwinds that were driven away by, and also big flashes, bizarre claims, as he talked about a woman walking around basically menstruating, he said, causing all of these things. He talked about caterpillars and worms and beetles dying, horrific climate catastrophes. Climate catastrophes were, this is not a new thing. We go way back. He has a whole list that he goes back, which I'm not going to read all the way through, but basically he goes back through history. Let me see. March 8th, 1667, a hard frost froze the Thames River. 1673, beginning of May till the middle of July, there was scarcely one dry day. It just kept raining and raining and raining. May 20th, 1681, cloudy, no rain till July 20th. There was a huge period of drought. 1682, that fitting the new barometer here, the mercury had risen, and this was a new thing. And it talked about how much it had risen, and they had never seen it just jump so high in such a short period of time. But anyway, as we go back through history, this guy, boy, he has a long list here of things that go back into the past and talk about horrific climate events that then oftentimes were blamed on man, but not blamed on man because we were pumping CO2 in the air. We weren't. This is before the industrial age. No, it was on our sins. We were doing horrible things, and God or the gods were punishing us. That was often the case at the time. One more thing on this topic. Smart meters could soon cost you a whole lot more. You ever notice trying to fight this whole climate change thing keeps costing us more money? Carbon sequestration, for example, is going to get really expensive. Wind and solar, with all of the subsidies, extraordinarily expensive. And now the idea that smart meters, they're trying to, in some cases, force them on you to reach net zero. Yeah, okay. The new smart meters are more expensive than ever before. And over in the UK, they're trying to get people to pick them up and install them whether they like it or not. And, of course, it's the cost of the smart meters, the cost of electricity keeps going up there, and they keep going to more and more unreliable energy at the same time, all to reach net zero. Maybe at another time we'll get into the whole smart meter thing, but yeah, what's happening over there in the UK is something that people want to push on us here in the United States, which would once again continue to raise your power bill. 9:42, wake up.
If it matters in Wyoming, it matters to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Call Glenn at 888-97-WOODS and make your voice heard. AM 1030, K2 Radio.
Coming up on 9:48 is Wake Up Wyoming. Off we go to Laramie to talk to David Settle. I just saw this, Dave, come up on social media. A picture of that very famous South Dakota bull bison with the blue jeans on his horn. And it says, getting excited for the start of buffalo petting season. Yeah.
And all the Turons that are out there.
In which case, I will have to repost, as I do every year, my field guide to Wyoming tourist types. Okay, let's go through it if we have just a couple of minutes here. The wheel lug a lot of stuff. The wheel lug a lot of stuff is those people who show up with every possible suitcase they can because they're packing too much stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of those suitcases are on wheels too, but they just way overthought every little thing went in there.
Yes.
Okay. The cargo shorticus. No matter what the event, they're wearing cargo shorts. The multi-pocket ones. Yeah, they could go to a fancy restaurant, reservation only, and they're wearing T-shirts and cargo shorts. Because, damn it, Dave, they're on vacation.
Exactly. Yeah. I like that. I'm okay with that, actually.
All right. I see. The Snackosaurus. Anytime they go by an ice cream parlor, there's fudge for sale, whatever the case is. And yet somehow they still manage to eat 3 big meals a day because they're on vacation.
Yes.
Yeah, and you should see, their kids yelling and screaming every time they pass by more snacks.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Been there, done that.
Okay. The cranky snot-noda obnoxerus. This is, it's hard to come up with these names sometimes, Frank. These are cranky, loud, obnoxious, snot-nosed kids. They the loudest things you've ever heard. I mean, you would think the animals in Yellowstone would be louder, but no. Too much energy, no manners. They scream a lot. They're probably hopped up on ice cream and fudge, too. So
I was going to say too much sugar.
See? They scream at their parents. They argue with everyone. They fight. They cry every 5 seconds. And then there's a pause, and then it starts all over again. By the way, Dave, this is called having fun.
Yeah, this is very true. Okay. I've done the family road trip a time or two. I will be honest with you, Glenn.
Yeah.
I took my kids to Yellowstone, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I didn't know if I was going to get are we there yet? Are we there yet?
God.
For, forever and ever.
Yeah.
My kids actually were really good.
Oh, good.
And so I'll shout out to my 2 children, but that doesn't go for everybody.
Congratulations.
I've seen the other side. Yeah, I'm in the minority, I think, on that.
Fashion offensive, Nick. This is the person who tries to look like a Wyoming cowboy or cowgirl, but the more they try, the worse it looks.
Yes, absolutely. See those all the time.
Stop. The red line trotter. This is the people who have sunburns in the shape of whatever shirt or hat they were wearing.
I am a self-proclaimed farmer's tan person.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this. I'm very proud of this name that I came up with, the selfie lotopus. Can you guess that one?
Yes.
Yeah, they take selfies everywhere they go.
Too many of them at the same time. All right, thanks a lot, Glenn. Our latest YO Preps coaches and media soccer and softball polls have come out, and a little change at the top in both 3A and 4A boys with a new number 1 this week. Torrington is the new number 1 in 3A boys as they beat Worland last week. Worland drops to 2nd. Green River's now 3rd, then Cody and Powell. 4A boys has Kelly Walsh overtaking Cheyenne Central, followed by Jackson, Sheridan, and Thunder Basin. In fact, Kelly Walsh is number 1 in both 4A divisions, as their girls are still number 1. Then it's Jackson, Laramie, Campbell County, and Natrona County in the 4A girls poll. And the big move in 3A girls, Lander went from unranked to 2nd. The Tigers have beaten 3 straight top 5 teams, and they did it in a span of 5 days, last Friday, Saturday, and then on Tuesday of this week. So Lander's 2nd behind Cody. Then Worland, Green River, and Douglas go 3, 4, 5. That's the YO Preps Coaches and Media Soccer poll. In softball, Wheatland made a little history as they became their program got ranked for the first time, and they are number 5 this week. Thunder Basin's back at number 1, followed by Campbell County. Shine East, who's been number 1 in the last couple of polls, dropped to 3rd. Then Cody is 4th ahead of Wheatland. Still no word about the softball doubleheaders with top-ranked Thunder Basin at number 5 Wheatland and 3rd-ranked East at Laramie today. Don't have word about that, but I can tell you that the Cheyenne Central track meet tomorrow and the Douglas Invitational track meet tomorrow both have been postponed to Monday, April 22nd, where there's far better weather in the forecast. Action yesterday on the softball diamond saw Cheyenne Central beat Cheyenne South 21-6. And on the soccer field, Central and East tied 2-2 in the girls match. And thanks to an own goal, Central actually beat East in the boys match 1-0. There are 4 soccer matches on the schedule today, including Riverton at Natrona in girls and boys play 4 and 6 at Cheney Alumni Field in Casper. And keep up on all the latest high school sports at YOPreps.com and on the YO Preps app. Cowboy football team will have their 11th practice session coming up today in Laramie. Also, you've got Cowgirl Tennis getting ready for their last regular season match at Colorado State tomorrow. And the Mount West Women's Golf Championships wrapping up in California today for the Wyoming Cowgirls, who are tied for 8th out of 9 teams in that competition. And that is your sports this hour.
I got 2 more for you.
Okay.
The future ER patient. Those are the people who grew up watching talking animals on television and cartoons and so on. And so now that they see one, they want to go pet it.
Yeah, there you go. See too many of those.
Yeah. Now, these here are the coolest people ever. The retired Autopus. They're usually very pleasant. They're on vacation while retired, so that's double. I mean, not just on vacation.
That's living the life.
They're
living the life right
yes.
there.
Usually, they make the more pleasant tours. They're retired. The kids are gone. They have no place they need to be. They're spending their children's inheritance, by the way.
Yep.
And they're having a great time. So you can just walk up and talk to them, Dave, and they are just the most pleasant people ever.
It's true.
It's Wake Up Wyoming.